On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, cut day in the NFL, it's Tuesday. Who's sticking around for the Houston Texans, who didn't do enough, and which players we believe make sense to keep around and stash on the practice squad.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Monday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your Texans football analyst, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, on the other side of the country, Cody Davis. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. We appreciate y'all for stopping by. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast. And hey, listen, over the course of the last month, Cody and I have had about 13,000, 14,000 views. Close to 10,000 of those views have come from our everydayers. So I just want to take this time to say thank you guys for keeping us rocking and rolling. We really appreciate it. The 2024 NFL regular season is a week and a half away.
Oh, my goodness.
Boy, can we not do this without you guys. So I really appreciate you guys for coming back like you do. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Now, Cody, let's get started with this show.
And on this Monday installment of Locked On Texans, John and myself will be looking at the Houston Texans 17-15 preseason finale victory over the Los Angeles Rams. And John, I think we could do it a little bit different because first and foremost, let's just get this out the way. That preseason game was a little bit boring. It was the final preseason game. However, it was arguably, if not the most important preseason game, because everybody who suited up on Saturday was fighting for a job, whether they was fighting for a job with the Houston Texans, whether they was fighting for a job for another team to go out there and put out some more something else on film to show another team what they can do, or whether or not it's time for them to update their LinkedIn profile, because it seemed like they might be out of a job completely in the NFL. But, you know, we're going to look at both sides of the ball. And, John, I do want to start on the offensive side of the ball as of right now. Just take a look at some players who actually won their job here with the Houston Texans in the first and foremost, right off the bat, let's just go ahead and throw this out here. I was surprised as hell when we got the news that Dameon Pierce was not going to suit up in their preseason finale against the Rams. And look, our good friend Jonathan Alexander, beat reporter for the Houston Chronicle, did have an opportunity to ask Coach DeMeco Ryans what went into that decision. He basically repeated what he said a couple days ago, that he's seen enough of Dameon Pierce and that he truly believes that Dameon Pierce is definitely going to be part of this team moving forward. And John, I still don't know how to feel about that, because one guy who definitely won a job with the Houston Texans put on another preseason show on Saturday, and that was, of course, Cam Akers. Wait
a minute. I'm just not going to let you call him Cam Akers. You got to call him Cam Spin Cycle Akers.
No.
3 spins in a row on one of those runs. And with Cam Akers in the Houston Texans 17-15 victory, 7 carries, 53 yards, 7.6 yards per carry. Also caught 3 catches for 19 yards, 4 targets. You know, I know you're going to talk about Cam Akers, so get back to it, please. But I just want to say Cam Akers, I believe, has played so well that the discussion surrounding RB2 isn't there. And for DeMeco Ryans, him seeing enough of Dameon Pierce, I would say it's valid, because we're not talking about who's going to be RB2 anymore. Now you're looking at the 3rd running back on the roster, maybe the 4th running back on the roster. And so it's not a real concern if I already got my top 2 spots filled. And I think after yesterday's performance for Houston, I would be shocked if when the new depth chart comes out, it's not Cam Akers.
And that's what I was going to allude to. Like, Cam Akers has looked so good. And once again, I know some of you guys have heard me say this. I'm going to repeat it again. I never forget the week after training camp. It was a Sunday afternoon. We got news that the Houston Texans have signed Cam Akers, and I'm pretty sure you guys know the backstory, but if you don't, Akers was already living here in Houston. The Houston Texans say, hey, we got a former pretty good running back. We know he's been battling injury. He's already living here in the city of Houston. Let's just bring him in for a workout. A workout, not a tryout, a workout. John, you was there when we saw him work out for that very first day. I remember you asking me, hey, who is that working out on the training field? I said, I don't know. Saturday, they signed him. Of course, Coach DeMeco Ryans was asked about it that Monday afternoon, and this is all he said. We just brought Cam Akers in just to see if he can complete. Plain and simple. There was no ifs and buts about it. I thought he was a training camp body. John, you thought he was a training camp body. Everybody thought he was a training camp body. And now, after a very good training camp where we saw this guy go from not having a single snap, doing 7 on 7, 11 on 11, all the way to put it on the show, doing not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 preseason games, Cam Akers has really made a name for himself. And this is what Coach DeMeco Ryans had to say about the decision going into cutdown day and how they're going to view Akers.
Cam has done a really nice job since we got him late there in training camp, but he's stepped in. He's done a really nice job, and everyone sees, like, when he gets the ball in his hands in the games, he's able to make defenders miss, and he's able to continue to press forward and make plays. So exciting, right? And it's also it's tough, right? And it's also, I love that it's tough to make these decisions because that means you have a good football team, and when it's not just set, you still have decisions to make. That's how it should be.
I know a lot of times, and you guys have heard this before, especially us reporters and stuff, we talk a lot about coach talk, air quotation marks. But I truly do believe that Coach DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio, they're definitely looking at Cam Akers, one, being happy, but two, and most importantly, looking at the fact that they have a tough decision to make. What do you do with Cam Akers and Dameon Pierce? Because, John, both of these guys at this stage, I think it's safe to say that they're going to make this roster. But who's going to be RB2? You say it's going to be Cam Akers. I still believe it should be Dameon Pierce, because if it's not Dameon Pierce and if it's Cam Akers, where does that leave DP? What are you going to do with him? I know a lot of people are talking about, let him be your kick returner. However, Steven Sims is another guy I have down that actually won a job here with the Houston Texans, and he has looked good as the returner dating back to last year. So it's like, what do you do with DP if Cam Akers take the helm as RB2? Do you keep him around? Because, look, Cam Akers has had a history of dealing with not 1 but 2 Achilles injuries, and you really don't know how things is going to fare once you turn up the heat, once the competition get brought up. But it's going to be very interesting. And another position that I'm looking at, man, that I did not think was going to be a quote-unquote concern, but it definitely is now, is who's going to take the helm as quarterback number 3. And I get it. And let me just say this. I will forever appreciate the one game that Case Keenum helped the Houston Texans win when C.J. Stroud went down with that concussion last year. And if it wasn't for Case Keenum holding this team together, the Houston Texans would not have made the playoffs last year, and all this talk of Super Bowl and all that would not exist. But ladies and gentlemen, and John, you could let me know because you was inside NRG Stadium looking at the game for yourself. Case Keenum looked bad. He looked terrible. He looked old. And I understand that he went down with a air quotation mark injury. And I think that injury came ironically after he overthrew and underthrew Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie, especially John Mechie, because if he don't underthrow him, that would have been a walk-in touchdown for my boy John Mechie. All of a sudden, he gets hurt. Tim Boyle comes in, 19 for 22, 142 yards, 2 touchdowns, looked really good and looked like he should take the helm as quarterback number 3. Here's what Coach DeMeco Ryans had to say about the decision on who's going to take that position going into Tuesday.
Yeah, we have a lot of discussions to make, so you guys asked a lot about the roster and all those things. Those questions will be answered as the week goes on. As you sit here right now today, no decisions has been made on anyone, so we'll see how the roster shakes out.
Yeah, DeMeco has been putting on a textbook clinic, I think, on how to protect your players and how to protect your roster and how to protect your franchise from a coach aspect. And I really respect him for it. I think when you look at that quarterback battle, you keep Case Keenum and try to find out how to put him on a practice squad. That way, because I do think Tim Boyle has played better than Case. I think he's outperformed them. Now, take it with a grain of salt. They're playing against 2s and 3s, in some cases 4s, right? And so, it's an emergency thing if Davis can't go, right? If CJ can't go, and if Davis can't go, then who can go? With Case, I do think Houston loves him around the locker room or loves him around his franchise.
They definitely do.
You can speak to that. So they love him. Can you keep him around? Because does he make sense to try to stash on a practice squad to allow them, maybe you move on from Tim Boyle and you keep Case? Do you move on from Case and you keep Tim? If so, is it practice squad? Or if you release them, do you think they're going to make waivers and then they'll just be a ready person that you can call? Who knows? And I think, like DeMeco Ryans said, when you have these type of tough decisions, going back to the running back position, including the wide receiver position, then that means you have a good football team. And I think that they do have a good football team. And I think that is a good problem to have. Now, when you look at players, I think winning their job on the offensive side of the ball, of course, John Mechie and Hutch. Right? There was no Robert Woods. Didn't think that Robert Woods necessarily needed to play. There has been no Noah Brown. So for Houston, I wonder, okay, if we keep 7, we keep a vet, we keep the 2 youngins, and John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson, and we keep Steven Sims. That'll give you Nico, Tank, Diggs, John Mechie at 4, Hutchinson 4 or 5. It's the same thing. I think they're going to be the same thing. I'm 4, you're 5 1 week. Next week, I'm 4, I'm 5, whatever the case is. And then I keep Noah Brown, and I keep Robert Woods at 6, and I keep Steven Sims at 7 for special team purposes. And, if we need you to play. So I think that Noah Brown is a guy that Houston can move on from. I think Quintez Cephas, and I think Johnny Johnson. Johnny Johnson has had a lot of experience here in Houston with the Houston Texans. And he played well for Houston yesterday. 2 targets, 2 catches, 28 yards, 1 TD. But I think between Johnson and Cephas, try to find a way to keep him on the roster on special teams. Keep him around the building, not special teams. Keep them around the building for practice squad positions, just in case you need them. And winning a job outside of Hutchinson and Quintez Cephas, winning a job, it's hard for me not to look at British Brooks and wonder if he is a better option at fullback
definitely
than Beck and Hairston. Now, mind you, keep this in mind, Houston likes to get creative. So we may see Brevin back there at times. We've seen Cade Stover lined up back there at times. But do you want to keep a fullback on this roster? If so, who are your better options? And I think Brooks is a better runner, and I think he may be a better pass catcher, even though Harrison caught a TD yesterday for the Houston Texans. Houston has some good problems on the offensive side of the ball. The great thing about it is none of those problems are coming from the quarterback position. The wide receiver position and the offensive line is sold up. I do want to give a shout-out to the offensive line in general. Do that later in the show, but I thought they played better, and Houston will have, I think, a good problem in figuring out who their reserves will be. But now we got to transition over to the defensive side of the ball, which is where I think it may get more difficult for the Texans and Nick Caserio and DeMeco Ryans, Matt Burke. The conversations will get more difficult because for Houston defensively, we can cut some of these guys, and we need to start immediately scouting the rest of the league. The league has already started to make cuts today, Sunday, at the time of this recording. Teams are already starting to release players or grant players an opportunity to seek a trade. Houston got to figure that out because going into this regular season, you want to make sure that you're prepared all 3 phases, all 3 levels to go out there and win a championship. So thankfully, we're not general managers of an NFL team. Cody, I don't think we would have the capacity at this point in our lives.
No, speak for yourself. I'll make a good GM.
You think you'll make a good GM?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'll trade your behind in a heartbeat. Like, you missed that much. Trade.
No, not you. Trade me.
No, not you. No, I'm just saying in general.
Well, you know what? Even if we tried to be general managers, You got to put a team together. And I would honestly, my first place to go is to look at some of my connections around the league if I made it to that point to be a general manager. But then I'm going to hop on LinkedIn, man. And even if I'm not a general manager, if I'm a small business owner, I'm going to check out LinkedIn because they help you find the quality professionals that you need that are right for the role that you're offering. That's why you guys always have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, whether you're hiring as a small professional business or if you're looking for your next career opportunity. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They always help you find the right professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those that are not actively searching for a new job, but maybe open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 1 day, 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. To post your job for free, terms and conditions apply. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. On the defensive side of the ball, who did enough, and not just against the Rams, but throughout training camp, throughout this preseason time period, who has done enough to win themselves a job? Who hasn't done enough, to lose a job? And Brandon K. Scott, a good friend of the show,
He is bad. He is bad from the show after this.
That's who shouldn't be a general manager. And I hope he sees this and laughs. But
oh my goodness,
throughout the game Saturday, and I don't know if and I tweeted him, Pastor Cavassier. I don't know if he was drinking or what, but he became the president of the Mike Ford fan club.
Oh my
and
goodness.
I do want to say, all things considered, yesterday was a good day for Mike Ford. But all things considered, there was no Matthew Stafford out there. There was no Puka Nacua. There was no Cooper Kupp out there. They had the 3s and the 4s out there. Good for him to have those good performances, but I don't think Mike Ford has done enough to stay on this team. Chris Boyd. So first of all, Brandon Hill, he will be out for the season. Got hurt against the LA Rams. Chris Boyd also went down with an injury, but he is expected to be okay. But I do think Houston has some question marks in their cornerback room. Even though we have not seen Jeff Okudah, I'm so confident in Kamari Lassiter throughout the year that I think that Okudah as a third stringer for Houston will make sense and work out. CJ Henderson, I don't know. I don't believe he's done enough to win a job. So now you're looking at three cornerbacks, that you may be more confident in compared to the rest of that room. But, man, okay, we go up in a pass-happy league. We got some of the top teams, coming into the NRG Stadium, or we're going to their houses this year, and we got to make sure that we got as much talent in a lot of these rooms as possible. So I think the cornerback position is still a serious position of concern. And Stingley aside, Lassiter aside, Okudah aside, but I can understand an argument as to where he's still a concern. They got to go out, and I think that's the type of position where you got to kind of scout the league when players are starting to get cut and figure out, okay, man, who makes sense right now for us? Who can we bring in for a workout, tryout within a week, and they can come in, and we'll be comfortable with them suiting up for the Houston Texans. Winning a job,
it's hard.
I want to look at the linebacker position, and I'm thinking, who won a job after yesterday's performance, Cody? Who do you think won a job on the defensive side of the ball?
The only person I can really think of is Malik Fisher. And John, I know we talk a lot.
He played well.
Over the last week or so, we have talked a lot about who's going to be the quote-unquote Khalil Davis of this year. And I think it's going to be Malik Fisher because the last 2 weeks, when you go back and take a look at his performance, last two preseason performances, he has looked really good. Especially, you know, what he was able to give this team at stopping the run, getting after the quarterback and everything. Had a really good stop late in the fourth quarter in order to help the Houston Texans come away victorious. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he's the one that came up big on the tackle when the Rams was trying to go for 2 to at least tie the game, and he came up really big on that. And when I saw Coach DeMeco Ryans leap for joy like that and being that excited for a stop late in the fourth quarter, final preseason game, you know, and, you know, had they would have executed that play, I mean, of course, it's a preseason game. There's no overtime. The game would have ended in a tie, whatever. When I saw that, that told me that Fisher not only won a job, I could see him being cut from the initial 53-man roster, but he's definitely going to be part of that practice squad roster. And if anything happens to Khalil Davis or you know, Mario Edwards or anybody else, and with that interior defensive line, Fisher is definitely going to have his name called throughout the season to give this offensive line, you know, something. But outside, go ahead.
No, I would say, ironically, same position, Marcus Hill. Coach talked about Marcus Hill in the post press conference and praised him, gave him a lot of praise. And, you know, I think he's a guy that the last two preseason games and practices, you just see him making plays at his position when he gets an opportunity to do so. I think that's two good problems for Houston. We like y'all a lot. We've loved what you've done. You're young. Right now, you may not be ready for the 53, but we got a place for you on our practice squad. We can keep you around, keep you in our scheme, keep you in our faces, keep you with our coaches so we can coach you up and get you ready for when your number is called. We won't expect a huge drop-off. And that's kind of what we mean when we say the Khalil Davis of this year. Like, who's going to be that player you can bring in? And in their opportunities, in their snaps, there's not a huge drop-off. But,
you know, somebody who I was very disappointed in, and I definitely believe he lost the job, Desmond King. Woo! And I don't, well, first of all,
the Jalen Petrie effect and him being good at what he's doing at nickel hurt Desmond King's chances to make this roster in the beginning.
I agree with that statement, John, but here's the catch to this, and this is why I'm so goddamn disappointed in Desmond King. Because on Saturday, I think he quit on the team. He muffed the punt, and then there was like two, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I counted 2 or 3 times where he was just going out there, was like, I missed a tackle, oh well. I missed a tackle, oh well. Like, I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Because I agree. Definitely not. I agree that putting Jalen Petrie nickel position affected him. But John, Desmond King, we have watched him for what, the last 2 to 3 seasons? He's shown that he could play nickel, and he's shown that he could play on the outside. And how many times have we came on this show, not just us, but all the rest of our colleagues saying, man, outside of Derek Stingley Jr., Kamara Lassiter, who else are you going to put out there on the outside to be your outside corners? Desmond King has the potential to do that. He could be cornerback number 3 and play either or. I mean, we saw what he's been able to do. No. Don't give me that face, because
not at this age, not at this point of his career. Not for this team.
Put it like this. Who would you rather, Desmond King or Mike Ford? Desmond King or C.J. Henderson? Desmond King or Troy Brown Jr.? All those other guys that I named, they should be getting ready to update their profile on LinkedIn, because pretty soon they're probably going to be our colleagues here on the Locked On Podcast Network or whatever the case might be. Desmond King could still provide, at least for what I've been able to see, Desmond King, I still believe, could have given this team something to where it said, you know what? If something happened to Jalen Petrie, or, you know, if we need you to play on the outside corner, whatever the case might be, not saying that he's going to have a bigger role like he did in 2021, 2022. Hell, not even having a similar role in 2023. But I just felt like he could have given and shown this team something to where it's like, look, we are already thin with our secondary at cornerback. Let's just keep you around, because we already know that 1, you're a veteran, 2, you come with experience, and 3, this franchise already know that if need be, we can rely on you for a series or 2 or whatever the case might be. Desmond King, man, literally gave up, and for the second year in a row, and unlike last year, we definitely won't be surprised. But I don't know what was going on with Desmond King on Saturday. He definitely blew his chance.
It definitely looked like he didn't care. It definitely looked like he was nonchalant out there playing for the Texans. And then you combine that with just Miles Bryant, I think, having his best moment of preseason so far.
Yeah, that too.
With the snaps, with the opportunities, and again.
And remember, I'm sorry to cut you off, but remember, we thought that was going to be the camp battle for that nickel position.
Yeah.
We didn't know they was going to mess it up with Jalen, but
that's a good mess up to have because Jalen has performed well. But Miles Bryant, I thought he went out there and had himself a hell of a day. 9 tackles, 7 solos, a tackle for loss. Went out there and I think took advantage of his opportunity. And then you look at Desmond King, who, and by the way, they also gave Miles Bryant an opportunity to get back there and return punts.
Mm-hmm.
Desmond King got back there and he fumbled. And it didn't look like it didn't look like Desmond was engaged at all while he was out there for the Houston Texans. And again, here's another position. Here's another player that I want to highlight. Del'Shawn Phillips played well for the Houston Texans. Do I think Lonnie Johnson is a starter for the NFL team across the board? Absolutely not. But he did show Houston something. And maybe the thought is, especially with these new kickoff rules, you don't get a chance to get a running head start. So we want to make sure we get guys down there quicker if they take off with the ball once they catch it. Lonnie has some speed to go down there and secure some tackles. Nelvie Hewitt has been this team's, like when he led the team in special teams tackles last year, I think with 13 or 14. They value him. But can Del'Shawn do that? Can Lonnie do that? Mainly, can Del'Shawn do that because they're in the same position? Neville actually, excuse me, I think he ended yesterday's game pretty well. 4 tackles, 4 solos, a tackles for loss, and one of those plays I was extremely impressed by. He's an NFL player, not to say that he can't do it. Hadn't seen it in a while is what I'm saying. So for Houston, the linebacker group is one of those positions where between linebacker and cornerback, again, teams are already starting to make their release and cuts. Is there a player we can go out there and sign? We got enough film on them throughout these 3 preseason games to know what they do and how they fit into our scheme. Or is there a player with $20 million, potentially 24, 25, if they move on from Robert Woods, there's a player out there that we could go and trade for, include a player in that package, include a late round pick, because clearly Houston don't care about late round picks because Ben Skoranek was traded for a 6th-rounder, and that was a waste because he ain't making his roster.
He lost his job.
He ain't making his roster. That ain't happening.
He went MIA.
We can kind of package with a pick to bring a player in to just make sure that we're comfortable. D-line, they're comfortable. Receiver, they're comfortable. I don't think you can sit back and say, man, we are comfortable at linebacker. And we are comfortable at cornerback. They are comfortable at safety. Eric Murray, I was wrong. I can admit that. But they are not comfortable in between outside of the numbers at corner and inside of the numbers at linebacker. So, we'll see how Houston goes about it. But does the Houston Texans have better depth than we expected when this preseason kickoff? We close off today's show talking about that. But before we move on, we want to let you guys know about this play that's going on. We want everybody to tap in. They are making it extremely hard to watch football. But FanDuel is helping with that because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you will be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook.
Just from the sideline watching, I feel like our O-line did a better job of staying attached and finishing blocks today. Always have to go back and watch the film to see, who stood out amongst the group. But I like how they worked collectively today to allow us to run the ball.
What's your evaluation of the linebackers' performance today?
I thought the linebackers did a nice job of tackling. All right, the guys stepped up. They tackled well, and they had a lot of chances to defend the run to see, guys step up and make plays in the run game. So that's where I see it. Again, you go back, evaluate the film to see where we were in the passing game.
That was DeMeco Ryans. I had an opportunity to ask him about the improved blocking from the offensive front. Didn't allow a sack for Houston Saturday, so I think that's an improvement. And also just looking at how well the running backs were able to perform. Cam Akers, 7.6 yards per carry. J.J. Taylor, 7 carries, 30 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. British Brooks, 5 carries, 25 yards, 5 yards per carry. Jawar Jordan, 4 carries, 12 yards, 3 yards per carry. I thought the offensive line did a very good job of holding up in terms of protecting Tim Boyle, who went out there 19 to 28, 142 yards, 2 TDs, and Case Keenum, 4 of 8, 32 yards, but did not get a sack off on that offensive line and allowed that team with Steven Sims getting 1 carry for 38 yards on a reverse, 5.7 yards per carry. I thought they did a very good job of allowing Houston to establish the run. And no, it wasn't with the starters, but that's a good sign for this team. And then just talking about the linebacker group, how well they performed. They're going to go back and look at how they were able to perform in terms of dropping back in coverage. But I agree, a good test for that defensive unit linebacker-wise to go up against a team that likes to run the ball well. And I thought that they played fairly well as well. So good problems to have, I think, is the theme of this show. The Texans have good problems to have in some cases, and DeMeco is, looking forward to having those good problems. Now, Cody, the question is, right, is this team's depth better than what we expected?
I'm going to say no, because...
Is it about the same of what we expected?
When you say expected, you talking about before or after the training camp / preseason?
I would say at the beginning of training camp.
Because at the beginning of training camp, it's a disappointment. More so when you take a look at on the defensive side of the ball, just with the cornerback and the linebacker unit as well. Because on paper, and I know I was around this team doing OTAs and mandatory minicamp, but it's really not much going on at that time. I mean, and even the first week of training camp, it's still not much going on. It's not until they put those pads on, then you can really start getting an evaluation of these players and where they're going to be at. And I remember beforehand, I thought that this team was very deep. Literally, I thought that they were. I thought that they had enough depth at every single position. And as training camp went on and watching this team throughout preseason, I started getting more and more and more concerned. I mean, as a matter of fact, I know we talked about this position a lot. I remember before training camp, looking back at my notes and stuff, doing OTAs and mandatory minicamp, coming on this show, beating on the table, Jeff Okudah, CB number 2, blah, 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 blah. And then, literally 2 days in the training camp, I had to come on the show and be like, I had to come on the show and be like, hey, look, I was wrong about Jeff Okudah. He is terrible. CJ Henderson looked better than him. And then all of a sudden, Kamari Lassiter come out of nowhere, and I guess we give him the title as, favorite player of training camp, because the way he was been balling, it's like he became everybody's favorite player. But now I'm starting to get a sense, look, I still think this is going to be a really good team. And of course, any team, it doesn't matter if you Kansas City, it doesn't matter if you Carolina. See what I did there? The best team to the worst team, and Houston Texans not at the bottom no more. But injuries will always hamper and derail a team season. Right. But for the Texans, I kind of feel like if they don't improve their depth within these next couple of days before a regular season start, they're still going to be better than the J.J. Watts and the Andre Johnson and the Deshaun Watson years. But, John, the number one of the things that hurt those teams was the fact that they was too top-heavy. And I'm starting to get a sense that this version of the Houston Texans might be top-heavy at certain positions, i.e. linebacker. Yeah. If you go out there with Christian Harris and Azeez, as your 2 primary line, you good. But look, something is going on with Christian Harris. And if he isn't ready to go come regular season, you could put Henry T there, but it's still like, okay, what's going on here? Same thing with your corner. So I just don't want to see us halfway through the season coming on the show talking about, hey, this person is down and they don't have nobody to fill it. And now this person is an easy target for the opposing team to attack. So
I think for me, I think I look at this team the same way, honestly. Like before all of this kicked off, we had video proof. I came on this show and I said I think this linebacker group is thin and the
Yeah,
talent.
you did.
Said the same thing about the cornerback position, and I vividly remember saying I'm not worried about Sting whatsoever. The only asterisk next to Sting is health, and I'm okay with him right now because I don't think that's going to play a factor in Stingley's performance this year. And I remember coming on and saying I think Jeff Okudah should win the number 2 spot because how much, I thought that Kamari needed some time to get accustomed to the speed of the NFL. But what has helped Kamari is going up against every day of practice Tank, Nico, Stephon, and John Mechie. 3 totally different styles of receivers, and that, helping him learn how to cover that in the NFL. But I was concerned about the cornerback position. The only group that I was concerned about, and I'm not concerned about anymore, is that safety position.
Yeah, that is true. Again, I agree.
The asterisk with health. I don't want to see Eric Murray out there playing over 70% of the snaps. But, Jimmy Ward got to stay healthy, and they have to just make sure that they are creating pressure. I think pressure is going to help this team out on the defensive side of the ball with Daniil, with Will, with the guys in the middle. That's what's going to help hide some of those inefficiencies. But it's kind of the same on the offensive side of the ball in terms of expecting and my depth expectations. Good at wide receiver. Even with the running back group, it's just it didn't come from Damian. It's coming from Cam. So I'm just switching out player, still have the same expectations based off my own eyes. Linemen, when they're on the field, they're going to be all right. And I'm even more confident in those guys whenever I saw Lambert Tunsil out there. So offensively, they're okay. The same concerns I had before camp are the same concerns I have now, aside from safety. And I think for Houston, how can you improve that within the next 3 days? Starting within the next day, in 2 days, we're recording Sunday. Tuesday, we get the major cutdown day. Who's out there? Who do you feel like fits your roster that you already have at home? Who's out there that's going to get cut that you believe you can bring in and help fill the voids? So we'll make sure that we can cover that and more here on the Locked On Texans podcast. Please subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Give me a follow on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.